Hello all, great afternoon to all of you who are actually present here. I would like to welcome each and every one of you to this special live session, which is going to be your fourth session of environment and ecology, okay, current affairs with respect to that of your Prelims Masterclass 2025. To all of you who are watching this video for the first time, I would like to say that this is Sureka Bhaskar and me on behalf of Narayana IAS Academy. I'll be taking up the environment and ecology series with respect to current affairs for the upcoming preliminary examination. So this is the fourth class. So if you're watching it for the first time, please do visit the YouTube channel of Narayana IAS Academy and have a look at all the 3 sessions that we have already started. And these are very high impacted, and these are very important areas which have a high potential of appearing in your upcoming prelims examination. Okay, so moving forward, let us actually discuss about the topics that we will be starting up today. And before that, as usual, I will take you through the number of topics we've already completed, that is significant amount and most important topics in the previous 3 classes. Okay, so as all of you know, please just follow me up in this particular screen. So we started the lecture of environment and ecology with the ecosystems. Okay, so under the ecosystem, we have actually covered the forest ecosystems. Okay, so under forest ecosystems, we actually covered a number of topics ranging from the Peace Forest Initiative, international arrangement of forest. We actually discussed about what do you mean by UNFCCC, the basics of UNCCD, as well as the concept of UNCBD. We also looked at other programs like the UN RED program, which essentially means reduction of emissions from the deforestation and forest degradation. We looked at that, and also we looked at the ocean ecosystem. In the ocean ecosystem, we spoke about the High Seas Treaty, as well as we spoke about the Blue Flag certification, which is given by FEE, okay, which is an international NGO. And also we saw the CEE, which is responsible for giving Blue Flag certification in India under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Okay, so these are all the topics where we covered with respect to forest and ocean. Then we actually moved on to the other ecosystems. So to those who actually followed this, in the other ecosystems, we spoke about the mountain ecosystem, where we saw the mountain partnership, and then we moved on to discuss about the peatlands, and then we also discussed about the mangroves. Moving on, we also spoke about, under mangroves, we spoke about what is this concept of blue carbon, etc. That is the amount of carbon that these coastal or the marine ecosystems actually sequester or store. And moving forward, we also looked at the concept or the wetland ecosystem which are preserved under the Ramsar Convention. So we also saw what do you mean by the Ramsar Convention. Okay, so after finishing all these other kinds of ecosystems, we moved on to deal with what? The important environmental organizations and bodies. Okay, so over here we discussed about the national environmental bodies like the NGT, and we saw the jurisdiction, the ruling, etc., and what is the connection that it actually has with that of the the awards or the rulings that it can give with respect to the environmental cases, whether it holds the jurisdiction or the it has the authority of the civil court or the criminal court. All that we discussed, which can become important prelim pointers for you. And moving forward, we also looked at the World Wildlife Fund for Nature, which is an important organization as well. And then we saw about the IMD. This is actually your international organization. Plus this, we saw the Global Environmental Facility and different types of conventions it actually sponsored or funds. That is the Minamata Convention, the Stockholm Convention, UNFCCC, you have UNCBD, UNCCD, etc. we discussed here. And also we moved to discuss about the Indian Meteorological Department. Followed by that, we saw the Central Groundwater Board. Okay, so we covered significant portions under ecosystem, and moving on, we also covered the national organizations, that is environmental organizations. Then we started with this particular topic, that is third topic, climate change, yesterday, right? So we started with the environmental or climate change mitigation and adaptation. Okay, so under that we saw various techniques, like what all we saw. We actually discussed about the marine carbon dioxide removal technique. Then we moved on to discuss about the phenomena, or you can say the mechanism of carbon markets as well as carbon credits. Then we moved on to discuss about other concepts like the EU-CBAM, carbon border adjustment mechanism, etc. And after that, we moved on in understanding what are the key takeaways from India with respect to the COP29 that was recently held in Baku. So, COP29 of UNFCCC is what we discussed, and after that we closed our session by discussing COP16 of UNCCD. Okay, so these are all the concepts that we had discussed so far. Okay, so today a brand new class. It's actually going to be an extension of yesterday's topic, that is this climate change. After finishing of climate change, we will move on to biodiversity and see to that biodiversity is also taken care of. Okay, so under this particular what to say climate change, we have three more topics that is left, and please focus on this particular slide. We will discuss on what are all the topics that we are going to see today. Okay, so the first topic for the day will be on green climate fund. Okay, so what do you mean by green climate fund? What is the authority of green climate fund? Because recently this green climate fund has actually approved SIDBI, that is the Small Industries Development Bank of India, in order to environmental sustainably sponsor a foundation. Okay, so that also we will actually see what is that foundation, whether the sustainable environmental funding is properly utilized or not, all that we will see. Moving on, the second topic that we will be discussing about is Mars. So this is nothing but it is the methane alert and response system. So this is nothing but it is the what to say satellite based system that is actually used for assessing the amount of methane that is emitted into the atmosphere. So these satellites actually capture the data with respect to the amount of methane emission that is actually happening, what is the global warming potential because of this. We will also see the link between this particular Mars as well as the global methane pledge that we actually discussed yesterday, where India is not a part of. All that we will be discussing in this particular article. Now moving forward, the third important and the last article for climate change will be this particular Antarctic Treaty. So the next topic is Antarctic Treaty. Okay, so here we will be discussing about what is this Antarctic region. Okay, so by terms or in terms of area, this is actually which of the largest continents, that is it is whether fourth or fifth in time in terms of size when compared to that of the other continents, and what is the speciality, whether this is a continent or whether it is a frozen ocean, and what is this treaty and what are the provisions under this treaty to which the countries must actually abide by, which are the signatories of this particular treaty, and what is the role of India in this particular treaty, whether India has signed it or not, and what are the research stations that India has established in the Antarctic is what we will be discussing in this particular topic, that is Antarctic Treaty. So with this green climate fund, the methane alert response system and the Antarctic Treaty, we will be done with the climate change. Then what we will actually be starting with your India's initiatives with respect to climate change. So India's initiatives with respect to climate change. So this is also a part of climate change, but here comes India's response to climate change. Okay, where number one is the greenwashing guidelines that has recently brought about by CCPA. Okay, so CCPA's recent greenwashing guidelines, and here we will be discussing about what do you mean by the phenomena or the term greenwashing. Okay, so these are the deceptive or the false practices that are actually taken up by the companies in order to prove that all their activities, their products, their services are environmentally sustainable, but in reality they are not. So with respect to that, in order to combat that, what are the regulations or the guidelines that have been brought about by CCPA is what we will discuss here. Then moving forward, we will talk about one of a similar topic. We'll talk about the recent Ecomark rules of 2024. These Ecomark rules was actually recently come up, or it was released by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Similarly, what are all, or what is the criteria of a particular product or the good that actually is eligible to be given this particular Ecomark rule? What are the provisions? It is under which of the legal framework? All that we will discuss over here. Moving forward, we will talk about the coastal regulation zones. So recently there was this coastal regulation zone notification which actually altered or given some kind of flexibility to these CRZs. Okay, so it has given flexibility to the states to carry about certain developmental activities, especially in the CRZ, that is the coastal regulation zone 3, that is highly or densely populated rural areas, which reduced the sensitive zone from 200 meters to 50 meters. Okay, so here we will be discussing about what is the concept of the coastal regulation zones, and what are all the different types of coastal regulation zone, like CRZ1 where no activity is actually allowed. Those are called as the eco-sensitive areas. So all that we will be discussing over here. Now moving forward, we will be talking about the green credit. Okay, so here we will be dealing with the green credits. Okay, so after this, yes, it is the green credit program that we will actually be discussing about. So here we will discuss what is the concept of green credits and whether it is similar to that of the carbon credits framework or not, which was released in 2023 in India. So all this we will discuss in this particular article. So moving forward, we have last 4 articles. So with this, we will end up with climate change and jump over to the next topic, that is biodiversity. Okay, with respect to biodiversity, we will start with the updated IUCN red list. So there are certain species that have actually been updated with respect to their threatened, what to say, the category. Okay, that is the conservation status, either from least concerned or whether it is actually threatened now, what is the current status, etc. All that we will be discussing. So updated IUCN list, red list is what we will discuss about. Now moving forward, we will talk about the tiger reserves and what was the recently added or declared tiger reserve, and in India, what is the process through which the tiger reserves are actually what to say, um, I'm sorry, I was lost in between. So over here, we will discuss about what is the criteria or which is the government, whether it's the state government or the union government, which categorizes a particular biosphere reserve or the wildlife sanctuary as tiger reserve. What is the criteria for that, and what is the role of the National Tiger Conservation Authority? So all this we will be discussing in this particular article. Okay, next one, here we will be discussing about the concept of biosphere reserves. So what are these biosphere reserves? Okay, whether it has a core area, whether it has a buffer area, and in the core area whether development activities or livelihood activities can actually be taking place or not, all that we'll discuss, and also look into what are the recommendations of certain committees in order to what to say, categorize certain regions like Western Ghats as biosphere reserve. All that we'll see, and what are the biosphere reserves in India is also what we will discuss over here. Next, moving forward, the last topic for the day will be eco-sensitive areas or zones. So what are eco-sensitive areas, and whether these areas will actually be acting as a buffer zone in order to prevent, that is, these areas are located exactly around the national parks, the biosphere reserves, as well as the wildlife sanctuaries. Okay, so these are eco-sensitive areas. How these provide buffer from the anthropogenic activities to these important conservation sites is what we will discuss in this particular article. So these are the 11 articles that I will be taking you through today for this particular class. Okay, so with this we will be completing the biodiversity as well. Okay, so we will be completing biodiversity as well. After finishing ecosystem, environment, and the related bodies, environmental organizations, then we will be done with climate change today. and moving on we will finish biodiversity as well. After that, let's leave the species to the last. Let's save it to the last because there are around 45 to 50 species that have to be discussed. So let's leave that, and next topic which will be taken up from tomorrow will be pollution, followed by waste management, and then we will talk about different key terms in news, and finally deal with geography before this particular species in news. Okay, so let's actually take it forward. Let's start with our very first article, that is Green Climate Fund. As I already told you before that, let me see if there are any comments that have actually started. Okay, not yet. So let's quickly start. So Green Climate Fund, as I told you, SIDBI, this is a small industries development bank of India. So SIDBI has actually been given authorization by the Green Climate Fund in order to environmentally finance or environmental sustainably finance the Avana Sustainability Fund. So what we need to understand here, SIDBI is not that important. So since it's an environment topic, we will discuss about what is the relevance of this Green Climate Fund and what is this Avana Sustainability Fund. Okay, so let us actually move forward. So if you see, the Avana Sustainability Fund actually aims to invest in the early stage companies. Okay, so these early stage companies focus on innovation. What is the type of innovation? The technology led innovations in order to foster resilience to climate change. Okay, and this actually improves sustainability in India. So this is the aim of this Avana Foundation. Also, it aims at making substantial impacts on climate change mitigation and adaptation. Here I hope you remember what is the difference between mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation is all those activities that you actually undertake in order to prevent any kind of impact of climate change. Okay, so what are such activities? Making use of renewable energy, then sustainable utilization of forests. Okay, so all these are examples. Okay, so this is what it is. Adaptation is already the impact is there. In order to adjust to that impact, what are all the strategies you take? So these are called as adaptation measures. Okay, so this is the difference between mitigation and adaptation, and this Avana Sustainability Fund actually focuses on these what to say substantial impact on the climate change mitigation and adaptation, and thereby it boosts the resilience of India's particularly vulnerable sectors. Okay, so this is what is Avana Sustainability Fund. Moving forward, now it is very important for us to understand what is this particular Green Climate Fund. What do you mean by Green Climate Fund? This fund was established in the year 2010. So what does it basically do? Where does it get funds? It actually channelizes the funds from the richer countries and gives it to the other developing countries in order to reduce the impact of climate change. So this is what it is. Okay, so as I told you, this got established in 2011, sorry, in 2010, and here in 2011 this is getting accepted by the UNFCCC. So UNFCCC in the meeting of COP16, okay, this is around 2010. Okay, so in 2010, that is in COP16, the UNFCCC has actually accepted this particular Green Climate Fund as what? A financial mechanism, because this also acted as a critical element, because just because in just before what to say, this is a critical element. Why? Because you know it is a part of the Paris Agreement also. You know the Paris Agreement in 2015, in order to support the developing countries, it actually came up with the INDC, right? The nationally determined contributions. Okay, what are these nationally determined contributions as per climate change? All the countries which are parties to it actually have to what? They have to come up with the short term as well as the long term goals, and in the short term goals they have to say what are the mechanisms they will be undertaking for the climate change mitigation. So what is going to be for the next 5 years and next 10 years, this is what they have to say. And similarly, India actually has 3 INDC targets as a part of its NDC, or 3 and both are same, intended nationally determined contributions. Okay, as a part of INDC 2030, India actually has 3. Okay, so what are these 3 pledges or the targets that India has actually kept? The first one is to reduce the emissions by 45%, okay, from the 2005 levels. This is number one. That is 45% of GDP, okay, from the 2005 levels. Next one is you have to increase the capacity of the forest so that it acts as the carbon sinks in order to sequester or to store 2 to 3 billion tons of carbon dioxide. And the next one is around 50% of the installed electricity capacity should actually come from non-fossil fuel sources. So these are all the NDC targets that India had actually committed to. And we also saw there were, there's going to be a significant delay in the NDC to 2030 or 2035 because India is not really happy with the outcomes of COP29, where they actually gave the quantified goal or the funding, right? They actually gave around only $300 billion in the place of $1.3 trillion. So these were the outcomes. So here it is critical, this particular Green Climate Fund is critical because the Paris Agreement also came up with the NDCs, okay? And also if you see, Green Climate Fund sponsors the programs that enable and promote adaptation, okay? And then remediation. This also includes RED, right? The RED program. What do you mean by RED? Reduction of emission from deforestation and forest degradation, and also technological development and shift with respect to climate change. For example, you have the CCS method, that is the carbon capture, utilization and storage, then capacity development and national data analysis. So this is all about the Green Climate Fund, okay? Now, if you see how is the funding portfolio of this particular Green Climate Fund is that it works on 50:50, okay? So 50% of the fund actually goes to the mitigation strategies and 50% actually goes to the adaptation strategies, okay? So under the adaptation itself, you see it actually applies to different countries. It actually applies to the small island developing countries and then the least developing countries as well as Africa and the other developing countries as well. So this is the total GCF funding portfolio, okay? So do you understand? So now let us actually move forward and see what is the portfolio. I told you it is 50:50 balance in investments between mitigation and adaptation. It also aims for a floor of 50% of the adaptation allocation for which countries or for which areas. It's particularly the vulnerable countries like the least developed countries, the small island developing states as well as the African states, okay? So this is what is the GCF portfolio. Now let's move forward. The next topic, the second topic that we'll be dealing with is the methane alert and response system. So Mars, that is if you see at COP28, you need to also remember what are these COPs, okay? So COP26, where was it held? It is very famous, Glasgow. Why this is very significant is in this Glasgow only we actually came up with a number of pledges, like the global methane pledge was a part of this COP26 at Glasgow. Then you know the mission Life that was actually brought about or it was launched by India, and here what to say, this mission Life was also a part of COP26, okay? So you need to know where was this COP29 also. This actually held in Baku, and what were all the takeaways you need to know, okay? And that is the NCQG, new collective quantified goals, okay? The funding you need to know, and also COP28. Where was COP28 and COP27? Please mention in the comment section, okay? So whether it actually took place at Dubai or whether it was in Egypt, this is what you need to tell me, okay? So COP27 was in Egypt and COP28 was in Dubai, okay? Last year. So Mars, that is a methane alert and response system. As you know, they are actually alerting you and they are asking you to respond to the amount of methane emission into the atmosphere. This is very simple. So at the COP28, okay, which was actually held in Dubai, the United Nations Environment Program, that is UNEP, had actually stated that Mars, that is methane alert and response system, has informed the governments of over 127 methane plumes across 4 continents, okay? So what do you mean by methane plumes? These are large methane emissions. So Mars has actually stated that there have been huge activities or larger scale of methane emissions. So this is what the UNEP has actually told in the COP28. So this is all not important. You have to understand the mechanism and also about how methane actually plays an important role in this global warming. Okay, so if you see here, it is actually a satellite based system, and we will see how it helps in the assimilation of data, and finally how it gives the data in its final form. Okay, now let's move forward. As I told you, it is a satellite based system. And why is this satellite based system? What is the purpose? It is actually used for monitoring the methane emission from space. And when was it launched? It was actually launched in COP27 at UNFCCC. I mean, to UNFCCC, that is United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in Egypt, that is Sharm el Sheikh. Okay. Next, it was set up as a part of UNEP's IMEO. What does that mean? It is International Methane Emissions Observatory. It is actually set up as UNEP's IMEO. Very important. And what is its major role? Its major role is to support the global methane pledge. Okay, very important. We read about the global methane pledge yesterday. That is, what happened is at COP26 in Glasgow, all the countries actually came together and understood what is the menace of methane in contributing to the climate change as well as global warming. Okay, so what did they do? There is that they actually brought about this global methane pledge, where they actually pledged that there will be reduction of 30% of methane emission by the year 2030. This is what they actually committed to, and by this I'm sorry, and by this mechanism, they actually wanted to reduce at least 0.2 degrees Celsius of global warming by the year 2050. So this was the global methane pledge. However, India did not sign it. As I told you, India actually is focused on agriculture as well as livestock, which after death definitely releases, and agriculture practices also release methane, right? Livestock also releases methane. So because of that, India was not able to abide by this. India is not a signatory. Okay. Now, how does Mars work? It actually uses multiple methane observing satellites. Okay, these satellites are used to detect, they are used to attribute and monitor the methane sources, and the data is finally made available to all the businesses, public as well as the policy makers. How does it work? It works in partnership with IEA, that is the International Energy Agency, as well as the CCAC. Okay, this is nothing but Climate and Clean Air Coalition. Okay, so this is about the Mars, that is the methane alert and response system. Now moving forward, we will see. First, it actually detects and attributes. Okay, so methane is first of all detected and attributed. Next, what happens? There is alert, which is actually giving, where it actually aims to give alert and engage all the stakeholders who are concerned over here. Next one is response. Okay, so it actually urges the stakeholders in order to take the abatement action or the mitigation action. Next one is the systems. Okay, so here it helps you to track, to learn as well as collaborate, so that you can improve in your methane mitigation, or in case if the ozone is actually getting depleted because of methane, you need to take the adaptation strategies. Next one, we will read about what is methane. Okay, it is a colorless, it is an odorless and a highly flammable gas. Okay, and this gas is lighter than that of air. And if you see, this is the second most important GHG, that is the greenhouse gas, after carbon dioxide. Okay, and it accounts for 16% of the global emissions. And if you see, it is 28 times, more potent when compared to that of carbon dioxide at trapping heat. So it actually traps more moisture, that is 28 times more than that of carbon dioxide. And what are the major sources? One is agriculture, next is the energy sector. So if you actually see here, this is methane, that is CH4. You have the carbon atom here, and you have 4 hydrogen atoms which are bonded to this particular carbon atom by a covalent bond, single covalent bond, not important. Anyways, methane is CH4. Okay, now let's move forward to the next topic, that is Antarctic Treaty. Okay, so by that time, let's actually see if there's any doubt in the comment section. Okay, So now let us actually move to the Antarctic Treaty. So India recently hosted the 46th Antarctic Treaty consultative meeting in Kochi, that is Kerala. So what is important for us is to understand about this particular Antarctic region, and then we will move to understand what this Antarctic Treaty is all about and how important is this region for India and how faster it is actually being susceptible or succumbing to the menace of climate change. Okay, now let us quickly move forward and understand what is this Antarctic Treaty. How beautiful. See, these are penguins. Okay, so while studying, don't be too serious. Please do take a break and look at all this and enjoy. You know, sometimes when it is like too stressful, it's it is very relieving when you watch these animals. You know, especially in your National Geographic, it's very beautiful. So we will see. Because there was an article and also there was a video recently that was released where Antarctic was becoming green. That is very concerning. No, don't watch such videos. It will increase your stress. Finally, let's move to this Antarctic Treaty. So when was it actually signed? This was actually signed in Washington in 1959. There were 12 countries which actually signed this, okay? And this actually happened during the International Geophysical Year of 1957-1958. So this 1957, the period of 1957 to 58, this particular year was actually considered as International Geophysical Year because it called for international collaboration for studying the geophysical phenomena of the earth. Okay, so what are all the geophysical phenomena? That's part of your syllabus also, no? Important geophysical phenomena. So here the phenomena actually included the, you know, solar activity, and then it actually included topics like the geomagnetic storm. It talks about Earth's magnetic field. It talked about the ionosphere. Okay, it talked about the formation of auroras. Okay, so all these were discussed in that particular period. That is why it was called as the, or it was termed the International Geopolitical Year 1957-1958. So which are the 12 countries that actually signed? These 12 countries were actually playing a very important and an active part in Antarctica. So these came together and signed it in Washington in 1959. So the countries include Argentina, Australia, Belgium, Chile, France, then it included Japan, and then it had New Zealand, Norway, South Africa, definitely nothing without the US. So the US, the UK, as well as USSR. Okay, so this was actually before the disintegration of the Soviet Union. Now let's see the enforcement as well as expansion. It came into enforcement in 1961 only, after 2 years, and since then it has actually been expanded, and currently if you see the number of parties to this treaty, they stand to be 56. So initially that it was actually signed by 12 countries. Now the number of parties who are interested in carrying out research and understanding about the importance of this region stand to be 56. Now moving forward, let us understand about the Antarctic region. I will take you very closely to this. So I hope you can see this, right? Yeah. So this is actually your Antarctica. Can you see? This is Antarctica, a continent that is permanently frozen. Okay, so this is Antarctica. The main difference between Antarctica and Arctic is what you have to know is Antarctica is nothing but it is a frozen ocean. Sorry, it's a frozen continent. It's a frozen continent. Whereas Arctic, if you see, it is a frozen ocean. Arctic is a frozen ocean. Okay. So if you see this frozen continent, it is surrounded completely by the Southern Ocean. The Southern Ocean. Okay. Southern Ocean everywhere. And then that actually acts as a connectivity to the other oceans like the Pacific Ocean. Then you have the Atlantic Ocean, and finally you have the Indian Ocean over here. Okay, so which are all the countries are parties to it? Whichever actually what to say, the treaty actually is binding on the countries which are below 60 degrees south. Okay, it applies to, I won't say binding, it applies to. Okay, so now let us actually see what are all the important seas that are surrounding this particular Antarctica. Okay, so I hope this is actually visible for you guys. So if you see here, this is actually Antarctica. Of course, this is West Antarctica. This is East Antarctica. You have the Ross Sea over here. This is the Southern Ocean. Okay. You have the Ross Sea. Then you have the Weddell Sea over here. And also you can actually see the Amundsen Sea over here. And then Bellinghausen. Then you can see the Scotia Sea over here. So all these are, then you have the Davis Sea over here. So these are, these are the seas that are actually surrounding this particular continent, and you can see over here this blue color actually depicts the sea ice. Okay, and the white color over here, these are the ice shelf. Can you see? This is the Ross ice shelf, this is the Ron ice shelf. So these white color portions over here, these are all the ice shelves over here, and finally this entire gray region is the ice sheet. Okay, so this is actually the map of Antarctica. So it is actually a frozen continent. Do you understand? Now let us actually move forward. Let us see about the Antarctic Treaty. So what it aims at, obviously there has to be a proper governing framework in order to regulate the region of Antarctica and also to decentralize this particular region. Countries actually establish and they can make use of this place in order to establish the research station and all, but they cannot govern. No particular country has onus or sovereignty over this particular region. So to demilitarize Antarctica, you should not use it for military purposes, and to designate it as a zone which is actually free from any kind of nuclear test or any kind of radioactive waste disposal, and also make sure that it is used only for peaceful purposes. Okay, and this treaty actually aims to promote the scientific cooperation and set aside the disputes. Only scientific cooperation should be there. So what are the scientific research stations that India actually has here is Maitri as well as Bharati. Okay, if you see the geographical scope that the treaty actually offers, it applies to the areas which are south of 60 degrees latitude. I told you, no, so that encompasses the entire Antarctica, and the headquarters of this is located in downtown Buenos Aires, Argentina. Okay, so this is about the Antarctic Treaty. Now if you see about India's involvement in the Antarctic Treaty, we actually signed it in the year 1983, and the same year India was given the consultative status also. And as of, if you compare all the 29 consultative parties, India has been active in this particular Antarctica by establishing Maitri as well as Bharati research stations. Okay, so this is what is important. Now moving forward, let us see what are all the main principles that this particular treaty entails. The first is no military use. Of course, they said you should actually use it only for peaceful purposes. You should not use it for any kind of radioactive waste disposal. You should actually not claim sovereignty over the region, and you have to use only for peaceful purposes. This is one. Number two, freedom of scientific investigation. Any country can come and they can actually establish their research centers over here to study the particular region. Next, free exchange of scientific plans and data. Okay, so there has to be free flow of data. If India through Maitri and Bharati find out something very interesting, they can share this data with the other countries and vice versa. And also other countries can actually come and check what is going on in Maitri and Bharati. Okay, so it has to be transparent and accountable. Do you understand? And this also holds you accountable so that you do not carry out any kind of nuclear programs or weaponization over there. Next one, any territorial claims put on hold, so you do not claim the sovereignty over this particular region. Next one, nuclear free zone. Again, we actually spoke about it. No radioactive waste disposal or nuclear test to be conducted there. Then applies to the land but not the seas. So this particular treaty or the takeaway from the treaty applies only to this particular continent, not the seas around it. Okay, this is what it says. And all the stations are open to inspection by the other nations, already discussed. Next, national laws apply to the citizen, not the area. For example, India actually follows the Indian rules and regulations over there. Whatever, if we are taking some research on the genetic diversity or something, we have to follow our rules over here. Okay, this is what they say. That applies only to the citizens who are there working. citizens as in Indian citizens. It does not apply to everyone as common. Okay. Next one, treaty modification requires unanimous vote. So any kind of modification that you want to bring to any of the principles or any part of amendment that you want to make, it needs voting from all the signatories. And final one, all parties should have to ensure that there are no illegal activities that are carried out here. So this is what is the Antarctic Treaty. Do you understand? Now moving forward. The fourth article today is India's greenwashing guidelines. So as I told you, the Central Consumer Protection Authority, that is the CCPA, has under the Ministry of Consumer Affairs has actually issued guidelines for the prevention and regulation of greenwashing and misleading environmental uh, claims. Okay, so let us actually see what is this. Okay, so first you need to understand what do you mean by greenwashing. Greenwashing is nothing but when the companies or the corporates or any kind of industries, they falsify or they make any kind of claim saying that all their activities, the products, the services that they deliver, their emissions, everything, okay, or their output, everything is environmentally sustainable. It is all green, okay, but in truth it is not. Okay, so this is what is called as greenwashing. And in order for the consumers not to be cheated or have a false opinion or takeaway, the CCPA, that is the Central Consumer Protection Authority, has actually come up with certain guidelines. Let us see first of all what is the concept of greenwashing. Okay, so do you see this? The industries actually are emitting, but they paint a green picture. Okay, that's what they say, no, don't paint a rosy picture, I know the truth about you. So that is what it is. They're painting a green picture over here. So this is greenwashing, where the deceptive practices of the company are hidden by the company. So the companies exaggerate or they falsify the environmental claims to present their products, the services, the output, everything as eco-friendly. This particular term was actually coined by J. Westward in the year 1986. And there he actually said that greenwashing involves selective use. Okay, say they use a kind of environmental language that is very, very persuasive, where what they will do, they actually omit the harmful environmental details. Okay, like they will say no preservatives use and all those things. They actually totally forego these environmental harmful details using the what to say, unsubstantiated terms, and they actually promote a very false green image in order to capitalize the consumer goods. Okay, so this is what is called as greenwashing. Okay, now let's actually move forward and see further about examples of greenwashing. You know, there was this Volkswagen scandal which actually took place in 2015, where Volkswagen manipulated that the diesel emission tests were sustainable and they actually claimed their cars to be eco-friendly. But this was actually not the case because they resulted in a huge emission. So this is one of the scandals. Next one, the fossil fuel companies, the companies like Shell, then Bharat Petroleum, Coca-Cola, all these, they present misleading claims about the substantiality of the particular product, but then they have environmentally damaging practices only. Next one, the carbon offsets. Okay, so companies and corporates always say we are offsetting for the emissions that we are doing, that is this much of greenhouse gas emissions we have emitted, for that we have planted these many trees as part of our CSR. They say that, but in reality it does not, it is not done. Okay, there is no scientific validation for that. Next one, country level greenwashing. Okay, so some countries also claim that they are actually offsetting the carbon emissions, but then they have impactful environmental policies and practices only. Okay, so these are the examples of greenwashing. Okay, so what are the key highlights of the guidelines that has come up by the Central Consumer Protection Authority is that, first one, to protect the consumers from any kind of misleading environmental claims, and they have to prevent the disruptive practices and the false promotion of the companies. Okay, and ensure that whenever you use the terms like eco-friendly, when you use the terms like what to say, sustainable or green, they have to be used accurately and they have to be backed up by evidence. Next, This applies to what and all environmental, this one is that it is applicable to all the environmental claims, whether it is a product or whether it is a particular service. It includes who are all the stakeholders: the manufacturers, the service providers, the traders, the advertising agencies, as well as the whoever are endorsing this particular project, advertising. Okay. Next, advertisements must be substantiate claims with credible evidence. Whatever you advertise, whatever you say, this is sustainable, this is zero sugar, this is that, you will have to give proper evidence, okay, or certification saying that it is zero emissions or 100% eco friendly. Next one, the verification and disclosure requirements. The claims must be backed, I told you, by independent studies. There have to be certifications. That is, if you say it is 100% eco-friendly, you have to prove it. There has to be either Bureau of Indian Standards or somebody who have to support you or back you up and say, yes, your product is 100% eco-friendly. Next one, the products should clearly specify which part of it is eco-friendly, whether your production is eco-friendly, whether your packaging is eco-friendly, etc. Next one, consumers should be able to access the information. That is, you have to produce behind your product any QR codes where I can go and see, or consumers can go and see whether it is environmentally durable or not, and I need to have such information. And future oriented claims, okay, like emission reductions and all, must be accompanied by transparent plans. And also terms like non-toxic, 100% biodegradable need scientific proof. So these are all the verification and the disclosure requirements as per the guidelines. Okay. So if you see the products here, if you're saying green cola, then you need to be certified. You need to prove. Then Huggies pure and natural, yes, you need to prove it. So similarly, these are actually Ecomarks. Okay. So if you're claiming it, then you have to prove it by the certification. Okay. Then similarly, misleading labels that have actually been found for greenwashing are bio-friendly, then 100% natural, 100% organic, then bio, then also you have 100% sustainable, then eco-friendly, then earth-friendly, etc. Okay, so trustworthy certificates, this is cruelty-friendly, cruelty-free, and 1% for the planet, FSC. These are few examples of certain countries. Okay, this is not important. Now moving forward, let us continue. Apart from the verification, apart from what are all the products that can actually be given, what are the services that are included, the permissible and restricted claims are. What is permissible is that general statements like sustainable principles are allowed. Okay, if they are truly sustainable, if they are not misled. What are restricted? Like 100% natural, if they do not have any kind of scientific backing, they are restricted. What are prohibited claims? Anything which is very, unsustainable, which is very vague, or it is deceptive, these are restricted. Then use of technical terms, the same thing they are saying again and again. So advertisements must explain the technical terms, like what do you mean by environmental impact assessment. You and I understand because we've been preparing, right? We've been learning about it, we've been reading it in multiple places, we know. But then the layman must also understand in advertisements that this particular product has undergone EIA, environmental impact assessment, or what is the GHG emissions that is associated with that. In simple consumer friendly manner, it has to be advertised. Next, accurate qualifiers and disclosures must accompany the technical terms. This is not that important. You just have to be certified for any kind of term that you're using. And finally, the people, that is the violators, they will be subjected to very, very high penalties for misleading claims under the respective the consumer protection laws. Okay, so these are all the highlights of CCPA's greenwashing guidelines. Now let us actually move forward to see the fifth article, that is the Ecomark rules. This is also a label that is given to very environmental friendly or environmental sustainable products. Okay, so let us actually see. Before that, let's see if there is anything in the comment section. Okay, so just give me a minute. Okay, So now let's move forward and read about these Ecomark rules. Okay. So let's come. Yeah. So, Ecomark rules. The Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change has notified the Ecomark rules of 2024. Let us actually see what are these Ecomark rules. Again, environment friendly Ecomarks are environment friendly marks. Okay. So, in order to regulate that and to see whether these are not false and they actually do not what to say, come up with false claims, what happens? We have the Ecomark rules by the Environment Ministry. So what does these Ecomark rules 2024 says that they establish a particular criteria for labeling the eco-friendly products, whether it is your food, whether it is your cosmetics or any kind of electronics that you use, the soaps, etc. Okay. Next, this was introduced in 1991 as a voluntary scheme and it actually promotes environment as well as quality standards for consumer goods. And this actually aligns with what? This aligns with the mission life. So what do you mean by mission life? Life actually stands for lifestyle for environment. Okay. So this was introduced as a part of or in COP 26 to UNFCCC. Okay. And this mandates make use of what? It actually says your consumption. Sorry, 1 minute. Instead of focusing, or you can say from mindless and wasteful consumption, you have to, that is the basic principle of mission life, I'm telling you, you have to transcend from mindless and wasteful consumption to mindful and deliberate utilization. Okay, so you have to focus on this. So this is what is mission life, and this actually advocates for sustainable consumption. That's what I told you, for deliberate utilization instead of wasteful what? Instead of wasteful consumption. Okay, now we will actually move forward and see what are the key aspects of these rules. How does this eco mark is actually given to a particular product is that first, it is granted to products that actually have a license or a certification of conformity from whom? Either the quality control order or the BIS, that is Bureau of Indian Standards. Okay, and it has to meet the prescribed environmental criteria. Next one, the environmental criteria is that the products must actually adhere to certain standards. That is, it must aim at minimizing pollution. It has to be either recycled or reused, or it has to actually reduce the reliance on the polluting energy sources, particularly the fossil fuels, and it also has to avoid the harmful substances. Okay, so this is the environmental criteria. And what are the products it actually applies to around 17 product categories. This includes what? Paints. This includes cosmetics, then batteries, then edible oil, tea, coffee, toilet papers, coir, paper, etc. So all these are the key aspects of the rules and the products that are under that. See, these are all not very difficult topics, but you need to know that these Ecomark rules are there, and then the CRZ regulations have actually come up. These are news, and what have been regulated under that you need to know. At least have a general this one about the greenwashing guidelines that have been brought by who? The CCPA. About CCPA you can actually read and understand. Now, the application process. The manufacturers must apply for the Ecomark through who? The Central Pollution Control Board. This only is actually the nodal agency which is responsible for overseeing the verification process. Okay, through registered as well as other qualified agencies. Next one, the certification and compliance, you should know, must obtain their certification from BIS. The duration of this Ecomark is what? The certificates are valid for 3 years. Very important. Similarly, they can ask you IPR is valid for how many years? 20 years or 10 years? Please mention this. Next, oversight and implementation. There is actually a steering committee who is headed by the Environment Secretary to oversee all this process, the allocation, certification, etc. So these are the key aspects of the rules. Now let's move on to the sixth article, that is coastal regulation zones. So recently the Union Ministry of Environment and Ecology has actually approved the coastal management plan. Okay, so this plan was released as a part of CRZ notification of 2019 of 10 coastal districts of Kerala. So now let us actually see what do you mean by the coastal regulation zone and what is the plan. The plan is actually in tune with the provisions of the coastal regulation zone notification 2019. Okay, and here it permits all the coastal districts to take advantage because it has relaxed certain coastal regulation rules and initiated the development activities. Okay, so earlier no development had to take place in the CRZ, that is coastal regulation zone 3. This is the highly or densely populated rural areas up to 200 meters, but now this has actually been reduced to 50 meters. Okay, so that is why it is important for us to understand what are these coastal regulation zones. First of all, these are the areas along India's coastline, okay, which are regulated by the government for environmental sustainability also and also sustainable development. So let us actually see what is the concept of CRZ. These are the areas in India's coastline that are regulated by the government in order to protect the coastal environment while balancing the developmental needs also. Then the CRZ notification, it actually outlines what does the notification come. It talks about what are all the guidelines for both sustainable development and conservation of these coastal areas. So this is your coastal zone, okay, coastal regulated zone. So as I told you, if this is actually your land and this is your baseline, I told you what is the first 12 nautical meter, 12 nautical miles, okay, and then I told you what is the next 24 nautical miles, okay, and then I told you what is the next 200 nautical miles, okay. So what is the high tide, what is the low tide, what is this exclusive economic zone, this is it, okay, and these are territorial waters, this is the contiguous zone, and here there is actually high sea beyond it, and this is called as deep sea. Here you have the national airspace, and then here you, this entire thing is your international airspace, okay, and this is actually your CRZ. Do you understand? So this is the coastal zone. Now let us actually move forward. If you see the key provisions, what are the key provisions of this notification? In the no development zone, okay, there has been some relaxation, okay. So particularly no development zone, which is actually relaxed for the densely populated rural areas, which are called as the CRZ3. We will see what is CRZ1, which is eco-sensitive areas, what is CRZ2, 3, 4, etc. So CRZ3A, so this has actually reduced the restricted zone. Earlier it was 200 meters, now it has come down to 50 meters from the high tide line, where constructions are now allowed closer to the shore. And also this has actually promoted eco-tourism, okay. So it has to be in such a way that the marine ecosystem is also protected. At the same time, it has to generate sustainable livelihood also for the people who are dependent over there, okay. So this is CRZ3. Now this will actually be 50 meters now, and earlier it was 200 meters. It actually includes the population density of over 2000 plus people per square kilometer. That is what is CRZ3, okay. So eco-sensitive areas actually include what? The mud flats, the mangroves, etc. Do you understand? Now let us actually move forward. Next one, streamlining. Key provisions will continue apart from the no development zone relaxation. What are the other things? There has been streamlining of the clearance processes, okay. So the approval timelines have actually been reduced by this notification, okay, in order to promote the development while also maintaining the environmental safeguards. The next one is infrastructure development. That is any kind of basic infrastructure development like sewage treatment plants, like the schools, dispensaries can actually come up, okay. Next one is mining regulations. There is very high as well as strict mining regulations where the sand mining, okay, is strictly regulated in these areas as well as the ESA, that is CRZ1, okay. So these are all the key provisions of the notification. Now if I zoom it and show you, these are the CRZ classifications. So let us actually see one by one. I hope this is visible. Yeah. So CRZ1, it talks about ecologically sensitive areas, that is the ESA. Okay. So ESA, where it has high restrictions and only conservation of national security projects are allowed. When there is a threat to national security, if you have to protect India's coast or Indian coastline, then you have to carry only those activities which are allowed in that CRZ1A. One itself is divided into two, whereas CRZ1B talks about intertidal zones, and here also only national security or any kind of very important, like India is actually running out of some energy and you need very important or critical infrastructure to be developed there, only that is actually allowed over here. Next one, CRZ2, urban areas near the shoreline. First is ecological sensitive regions, next is urban areas near the shoreline. Here also construction is actually allowed on the landward side of the landward side, not towards the seaside. If it is over here, only landward side construction is actually allowed, okay, or any kind of structure is allowed. Next, CR3, this only had the notification, that is no development zone. This got relaxed, okay. So this includes the rural and the less developed areas. So CRZ3A, it includes the densely populated areas where the population density is around 2600 persons per square kilometer, with a reduced no development zone. Earlier it was 200, now it has actually reduced to what, 50, right? So this is what you need to know, 50 meter. Do you understand? Don't think 50 kilometer, 50 meter. Next, CRZ3B. Here, less populated areas, okay, with a 200 meter non-development zone. Next, finally, is the water area, which extends to 12 nautical miles. That comes under CRZ4, okay. Here, it includes the islands and tidal influenced water bodies over here. Here, it regulates activities that are impacting fishing as well as the marine resources, okay. So these are the different or the 4 coastal regulation zones, and you know what are the coastal regulation, what to say, the notification 2019, what are all the relaxed parameters over there. Now let's quickly move and yeah, see over here, this is the diagram. This is actually the sea and this is your island, 20 meter NDZ, no development zone. Do you understand? And if you see this red color line, no? This red color line actually indicates your high tide line. When the tide is high, till here it is actually your high tide line. Then you can see this blue color line, this one. This is actually your low tide line. And then you can also see this one, right? This one. This is coastal regulation zone of up to 50 meters. Then you can see the green one, the regulation zone of up to 200 meters. 200 meters. Then this pink one is up to here, activities can actually take place up to 500 meters. If you see the thick red color over here, these are the mangrove areas. This is also the mangrove areas, and this yellow actually shows that this is the no development zone, and any kind of activity shall not, development activity cannot take place over here, okay. So this is actually the one that has been depicted, or whatever we discussed over here with respect to the regulation. Now let's actually move forward to our 7th concept, that is the green credit program. So what do you mean by the green credit program? Okay, so the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change has actually changed the green credit program rules in order to first prioritize the ecosystem over tree planting. See the irony. Initially they said that you can carry on developmental activities near the shore, which in itself we feel that it is environmentally very hazardous, right? But now they are changing the rules of this green credit program and saying that no, conservation of ecosystem is first and then comes your plantation of trees. Fine, let's see what it is. So this is what it is. So they have recently changed the green credit program. So here we will try to understand what is this concept of green credit. This green credit was actually introduced in 2023 by Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Don't confuse this with the credit trading system. Okay, carbon credit trading system. Don't confuse that. So this green credit is different. Okay, this is actually a market based mechanism in order to incentivize the companies that actually come up, the individuals or the companies that come up with environmental sustainable solutions, okay, or environmental restoration efforts that are taken by the individuals and the companies. Do you understand? So the primary goal is to bring about sustainability, to reduce the waste, to improve the natural environment, etc. So that there is a sustainable living, there is environmental conservation under the mission life. Again, we spoke about, right, this, life for environment, where minute changes are made in your lifestyle for environment. Changes are made in your lifestyle so that you make your living as well as the environment also sustainable. So the implementing body is the Indian Council of Forestry Research and Education, very important, and it is an autonomous body under Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Indian Council of Forestry Research and Education. And also this program is independent, very very important, as I told you here. It is independent from the carbon credit trading scheme. I told you, right, when I am the company who is actually emitting more amount of carbon, then I'll have to buy the carbon credits. In case if I'm actually complying with the standards set by the government, then I can actually sell that in the carbon market. This is what is the carbon market mechanism, where there is buying and selling of the carbon credits in order to offset, or the price we actually pay for the emission. So this green credit is actually independent of the carbon credit trading system, which was introduced in 2023, that was made under the Energy Conservation Act, very very important, of 2001. Now moving forward, let us see what are the key features of this green credit program. First, the green credits. What happens is, participants, they can earn, it's similar only, they can earn the green credits for the contributions too. So if I am contributing to environment as well as ecological restoration, then I can get one green credit as a reward. It has covered different activities. 8 activities are actually covered here. That ranges from, it actually includes, tree plantation, it has water conservation, okay, then waste conservation, then sustainable agriculture, sustainable habitat, and so on. We will see what are they. And the compliance mechanism is, whatever is the green credit you have actually accrued so far for the emissions can be utilized by the organization for the compliance mechanism. That is, you can say that I have these much of green credits, and to offset it I have actually bought it, now I can sell it. So the diversion of the forest land for non-forestry, that is, I actually can do the offsetting. Okay. Next one, the green credit registry. So there is a green credit registry which is actually established to manage the credits that are earned. And finally, you have the trading platform in order to trade the green credits in a domestic market. Do you understand? So this is what it is. Now moving forward, these are all the 8 activities I told you under the program, where first starts with the tree plantation. It starts with the tree plantation. The next one is your water management. Next year goes your waste management. And then is your air pollution reduction. Okay. Then also mangrove conservation. The sustainable agriculture is here. Sustainable building as well as infrastructure is over here. Then Ecomark label development. All these are part which are considered under the green credit programs. Okay. So this is what it is. Now moving forward, we will see what is this IUCN red list. Okay. So it is a leading agency which actually provides us with the status or the conservation status of the organisms, right? So here recently IUCN, that is the International Union for Conservation of Nature, has updated the red list of threatened species. Okay. So now it is important for us to understand about this particular list. Okay. So it is a leading global resource, right? It provides the information or data about all species across the globe. So for evaluating what is the risk of extinction that a What is the risk of extinction a particular species actually goes through, whether it is threatened or whether it is least concerned, whether it is endangered, vulnerable, critically endangered, etc. Okay. So, risk of extinction among the animals, fungi and plant species. Next one, the significance, that is, it is an indicator of the global biodiversity health. So, it gives details about the species characteristics, the threats as well as the conservation actions. Of course, plays an important role in helping us achieve the SDG goals as well as the IT targets. What do you mean by SDG goals? You have, right? So, climate action is what? When the climate is good, that is climate action, SDG 13. Then life on land, SDG 15. Life below water, SDG 14. So, for all this, you actually have to know what is the status or the conservation status of the organisms. Okay. So, when all the climate actions are taken from our side, the threatened species actually might revive back to their original form. Okay. So, it serves as a key indicator for SDGs as well as the IT targets. What are IT targets? These are 20 biodiversity targets which were classified or categorized under 5 goals that had to be achieved by 2020. So, these are the IT target. The categorization under the IUCN red list is, it is based on the extinction risk that IUCN categorizes the animals in 9 categories. Okay, from the not evaluated to extinct. So, species classified as critically endangered. Remember, critically endangered is not CE, it is CR. It was recently asked in one of your state PSCs, I think Andhra Pradesh. Yeah. And then endangered and vulnerable, these are considered to be at very high risk of extinction. Okay. Then also it has a green status. Okay. The populations that are, what to say, depending upon the measures of conservation status, it is actually given the green status. So, it also has 8 categories like extinct in the wild, depleted, intermediate, critically depleted, moderately depleted, largely depleted, mostly depleted, or even fully recovered, okay, depending upon the improvement in the status or the conservation measures. Okay, so this is what is the green status. So, don't worry, don't think that IUCN only has the red list, it also has the green list. Okay. Next one. Let us see the classification. So, all the species are classified into 2. One, not evaluated, next evaluated. Okay. So, all species are classified into 2. Number 1 is not evaluated and number 2 is evaluated. Okay. So, this is what it is. Here the species are not considered for evaluation at all. So, here it is evaluated, and in case of evaluation, if there is no sufficient amount of data, then it is kept under DD, that is data deficient. If there is enough amount of adequate data, then you start classifying them into the least concerned, the near threatened, then you have the vulnerable. This is very important. Okay, the increasing level of extinction. Okay, it is like, I remember it like this only. Okay, Ellen Vesey. This is what I remember. So, this is called as the least concerned. You are not concerned about anything at all. But then when you are not concerned too much, what happens? You will come close to threatened. So, near threatened. And then you feel vulnerable about yourself. Okay, this is just a story I made up. So, this is what? You are just least concerned about anything in your life. You are just roaming about happily. But there comes a position where you are nearly threatened for your lethargy. So, you know, nearly threatened. After that, a particular amount of period, a particular period, you feel extremely vulnerable. Okay, so this is vulnerable. Okay, but then you want to bring an end to your vulnerability. That is why it actually becomes you are bringing end. So, endangered. Okay, so this is endangered, and becoming and putting an end was very critical for your life. So, critically endangered. Okay, then the last one is what? Extinct in the wild. If you follow all these things, then you will not be extinct in the wild or extinct. Simple. Okay, so you were very you were least concerned, because of this there was near threatening, this one that was happening to you. After that you felt vulnerable for few months. Then what happened? There had to be an end that has to be brought to your lethargy, which was critical at a very important point of your life, because of which you were saved from extinction in the wild and extinction. This is how I remember the increasing risk of extinction. Okay, so this is what is your IUCN red list. Now moving forward, key highlights of the recent IUCN red list: around 1,63,000 species, of which over 45,000 are threatened with extinction. Okay, very sad. Okay, 45,000 extinction. And the biodiversity is of course under huge stress because of poaching, because of climate change, because of invasive alien species. Okay, so there was a question on the invasive alien species also. You have to be very thorough with that. And then if you see recently, the Galotia bravona, that is nothing but a giant lizard found in the Canary Islands, improved. Okay, from critically endangered it actually became endangered. Okay, so this is what it is. From critically endangered it became endangered. So it has actually moved, or it has improved in its status. Now moving forward, let us see. These are all the species. Again, I'm just taking through the species. This in the material that you can actually see, or take a screenshot of this. There was this cactus, then there was this giant lizard. All these are under updated status. Then you have the Grand Canara shrimp. This is a reptile in the Canary Island, and also the wall lizard, that is Lipsia or Ipsia wall lizard was there, and this is actually in the island of Spain. Next one is the Bornean elephant. Okay, this is the smallest elephant. I will show the picture of these. Okay, so these actually face the threats of illegal trade, as well as the hindering reproduction of the frogs. Next one, that is the cactus. Okay, this is the cactus. So this was the next one. This lizard was a prey to the king snake of California. The next one also was a prey. This was also a skink, that is kind of a lizard only. Next one, lizard. This is threat from invasive species, that is the snake again. And the elephant was due to the anthropogenic activities. Okay, elephant was mainly due to the anthropogenic activities. So let us actually move forward and see the pictures. These are all the pictures. So this is actually your cactus, and this is your giant lizard. Okay, previously it was critical, it was least concern, now it has become critically endangered. Next one, oh, this is your Bornean elephant, the tiniest elephant. How sad. Now moving forward, if you see, this is the skink as well as the lizard. Okay, so these are all the species that have been updated in the IUCN status. Okay, now moving forward, tiger reserves. We have two more topics that is actually left behind. So one is the tiger reserves, and the next one will be what? I think it's biosphere reserves. These are very important. So let us actually have a track of what we are doing. Yeah. So the Chhattisgarh government recently has announced its decision to declare a new tiger reserve. What tiger reserve was that? It was named as Guru Ghasidas Tamor Pingla Tiger Reserve. Let us actually see where it is located, what is the kind of fauna that it has, what is the flora, whether it has any kind of rivers, and how much of tiger population does it actually have, what is the importance of tiger conservation in India. You know about the Project Tiger, introduced in 1973. So we will see all that in detail, and who actually has the authority to actually designate a particular reserve or the wildlife sanctuary as a tiger reserve, all that. So about the Guru Ghasidas Pingla Tiger Reserve, it is in northern Chhattisgarh, and this borders Madhya Pradesh and Jharkhand. Yes, it borders Madhya Pradesh and Jharkhand. This will be the third largest reserve in the country. Very important. Before knowing that this is the third largest, you need to know what is the first largest tiger reserve in the country. That is nothing but the Nagarjuna Sagar Sri Sailam Tiger Reserve in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. It's spread over the two states. Okay, so this is the largest, which actually extends to about 3,300 square kilometers. And the second one is the Simlipal Tiger Reserve in Odisha. Okay, it's a Simlipal Tiger Reserve, around 2,750 square kilometers. Also, it is going to be the fourth in the state. Okay, if you actually see the state of Chhattisgarh, it actually has already Tiger Reserves 3, that is Indravati. First one is Indravati, located in Bijapur. Then you have this Udanti Sittanadi. So you have the Sittanadi, and then you have the Achan Khamar, okay, in Mungeli. Okay, so Indravati, Udanti Sittanadi as well as the Achan Kamar, and the next one becomes this particular Guru Ghasidas. Okay, so these are the reserves in Chhattisgarh. Next one, what are the faunas? You have tigers, you have leopards here, hyenas, jackals, wolves, sloth bears, barking deer, all these things are there. And the rivers, very important, Hasdio, it is there, Gopad, as well as the Baranga rivers are there, and this also actually serves as a catchment area for different rivers like the Nior, the Bijador, the Banas and the Rihand. If you ask me, you have to create some mnemonics in order to remember this, because these are all very static. No, your understanding alone won't help you. What to say, sometimes it can come in match the following, which river actually flows through this particular Guru Ghasidas, all that becomes important. Okay, now let's move forward and see what are tiger reserves. These, from the name itself, these are reserves or the geographical areas which are there for the conservation of the tiger population. Okay, so this is actually composed of two parts. First is the core or the critical tiger habitat. So this area holds the national parks or the sanctuary status. Next one is the buffer. So this is your core area and this is your buffer area, where there is lower degree of habitat protection. So here the entire habitat, or there is a high degree of protection of habitat. Here there is a lower degree. Okay, and if you see India, there are around 55 tiger reserves in India. Okay, do you understand which is the 55th? You need to know. So in India, there are 55 tiger reserves, with Dholpur Kharauli Tiger Reserve. This is actually located in Rajasthan. So this was actually the 55th, which was declared in the year 2023. Okay. Now let us actually move forward. So see if this number is updated or not, because now recently this Guru Ghasidas has been given now. So just see once. Okay. So next one, about tiger reserves we saw. Now we will see what are the different tiger reserves in different states. For example, the largest in India is the Nagarjuna Sagar Srisailam, which is actually located in Andhra Pradesh. Similarly, in Uttar Pradesh, you have tiger reserves like Pilibhit as well as Ranipur. And then in Rajasthan, if you see, we have the Sariska, we have the Ranthambore, as well as the Ramghar Tiger Reserve. Okay. Then if you see the states of Tamil Nadu, we have Kalakad, Mudandurai, and then there is actually Anamalai, then there is actually Mudumalai and Srivalliputur, Meghamalai. All these things are these are the tiger reserves. Then if you see in Karnataka, we have the Nagarhole, then we actually have the Bandipur, etc. Then if you have in states like Chhattisgarh, we saw Sittanadi, then Achan Kamar, we have the Guru Ghasidas as well as Indravati. In other states also, you can actually see in West Bengal, it is Sundarban as well as Baksa. And then in Uttarakhand, you have the Rajaji Tiger Reserve as well as your Jim Corbett. In Bihar, you have the Valmiki. Assam, you actually have the Kaziranga, the Orang as well as the Manas. And then if you see in Jharkhand, we have the Palamu, we have the Dampa in Manipur. So all these are very, very important. If you see, for conservation of the status of tigers, what happened? India actually introduced in 1973 the Project Tiger. So this Project Tiger, where did it originate? In Uttarakhand. Okay, in 1973. Very, very important. And in India, if you see, the tiger reserves are actually spread over 75,000 square kilometers. Okay, very, very important. 75,000 kilometers. And India actually hosts around 3,000 species of tigers in its entire 53 to 55 tiger reserves. Okay, that is actually spread here. And India accounts for 70% of the tiger population of the world. So this is what is very, very important, and these are all the different tiger reserves in India. Now let's move forward. How are tiger reserves notified in India? So it's very surprising. that you would have thought that Ministry of 58 tiger reserves. Okay. Thank you, Sumit Mukherjee. Total number of bird sanctuary in India. Okay, so bird sanctuary is also important. So you can actually mention in the session or like how many bird sanctuaries, how many biosphere reserves are all present over here. It will be helpful for others as well, for me as well, if my data is a little outdated. Okay, so here, how are the tiger reserves notified in India? All of us would have actually thought, right? The Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change notifies it. It is actually no, that's not the answer. Surprisingly, it's the state government that actually notifies this as per section 38 of the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. So let us see what it is. So tiger reserves are notified by the state government as per section 38 of the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. Okay, so this actually happens on the advice of the NTCA, that is National Tiger Conservation Authority. What happens if a state actually thinks that, okay, 33 elephant reserves. Okay, thank you so much for the valuable input. Okay, so what usually happens while notifying a tiger reserve is that they will feel that, for example, if Tamil Nadu or if Chhattisgarh feels that Achankamar shall be a tiger reserve, okay. So what they will do is that first they will propose, okay. They will make a proposal. So the proposal is obtained from the state. And then what happens? The approval, it goes for approval to the NTCA, that is the National Tiger Conservation Authority, okay. So this is actually proposed under section 38 of the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. Now, the NTCA actually recommends, okay, chalo, let us actually do it. That is what the recommendation is actually given to the state after due diligence, and finally the state government notifies the area as a tiger reserve. So this is how the notification of tiger reserves is actually done in India. Okay. Now, very important, let's quickly go through about this National Tiger Conservation Authority. It is a statutory body. It is of course under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. This is constituted under the provisions of the WPA. Okay, WPA is Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. If you see the composition of it, it actually has a chairperson as well as a vice chairperson. Here the minister in charge of Ministry of Environment and Forest is the chairperson, that is a cabinet level minister. Next, the Minister of State, who is actually in charge of this Ministry of Environment, shall be the vice chairperson. And there are also members of the Parliament, the Secretary, the Ministry of Environment and the Forest and other members. What are the objectives is that it provides statutory authority to Project Tiger. I told you, right? So that it is legal, it becomes legal. And next one, it fosters accountability of the center state in management of the tiger reserves, okay. That is based on the MOUs with the states, so that it actually complies with the federal structure, because states cannot randomly notify and just randomly get approval, right? So this is what it is. So it is there for providing an oversight, okay, providing for an oversight by the Parliament, and finally addressing the livelihood interest of the local people who actually reside in this particular area. Okay, so this is what it is. Anything else? Yeah, 89 Ramsar sites. Okay, thank you so much. There are so many. See, 58. This is the updated one that we actually get from one of our aspirants who actually tells us in the comment section. So there are 58 tiger reserves in India. Okay, make it a correction. I had written it as 55. And the total number of bird sanctuaries in India, has anyone told? Not yet, I think. So elephant reserves in India, they are 33 in number, and next one is Ramsar sites, they are 89 in number. That we discussed, right? We were discussing about wetlands, okay, and also discussed about what is the first wetland in India which got the Ramsar recognition. It was the Chilika Lake. The largest is the Sundarban. The smallest is the Renuka in Himachal Pradesh. All these are wetlands. The state with maximum number of wetlands is Tamil Nadu. Okay. And recently, what are the wetlands which actually got recognition? Please do mention in the comment section. We had actually discussed about Nagi, right? So please mention that whether it's in the state of Bihar, whether it is artificial, whether it is whether it's man-made or whether it is natural, what are the criteria that of the region to be classified as a Ramsar site, all that we have discussed already. Okay, next one. The last topic for the day is biosphere reserves. So UNESCO has recently approved the designation of 11 new biosphere reserves. Okay, so this actually makes the number of biosphere reserves in the world network of biosphere reserves to around 759, which is actually spread across 136 countries. Okay, so 759. Now 11 new biosphere reserves have actually been added. Now, of course, what are biosphere reserves? Yeah, bird sanctuaries in India is 72. Yeah, thank you so much, Sumit. Now, let us continue with the biosphere reserve. What do you mean by biosphere reserve? This is actually an internationally designated area by this UNESCO. Okay, so this actually signifies the natural as well as the cultural landscape. Okay, so this is what is the biosphere reserve, where they focus on balancing the economic as well as the social development. Okay, so there are cultural values also, there is prevention of nature also. So this is what is the biosphere reserve, and it also serves as an example in order to show the harmony or how the human can coexist with the nature sustainably. So what is the criteria for a particular region to be declared as a biosphere reserve? This is what we need to know, very very important. Okay, so it must have a minimally disturbed core area. So there has to be a core area where the disturbance, okay, or any kind of developmental activities should be very very minimal over here. So this has to be a place of valuable nature conservation. So there is a core area. Next, there has to be it has to be a biogeographic unit, okay, that is large enough to sustain the population of large trophic levels. You know the trophic levels of population, right? Different trophic levels of energy flow, all that you need to know. Next one, it has to be an area which involves the local communities also, so that they actually give the traditional knowledge. Okay, so this is what it is in biodiversity preservation. And also this area must actually possess the potential of preserving the traditional tribal culture as well as the rural lifestyles that people have been following here for years. So this is the criteria for biosphere reserve, and it is an internationally designated area by UNESCO. Now, moving forward, let us see zones of biosphere reserves and what are all the activities that are allowed or not allowed in these regions. First is this core area, right? So in the core area, I told you there is minimal disturbance. So it is a highly protected region, and this is mainly what is it, dedicated for conserving the wildlife or any kind of genetic diversity or the natural environment in this particular region, and the human activities are totally prohibited here. So you can see actually animals and biodiversity, so minimal disturbance. Okay, so no development area. Do you understand? The second one, this is actually your buffer zone. Okay, so in this buffer zone, what are all are allowed? Okay, so this actually surrounds the core area. Certain and limited activities are actually allowed over here, either if you're visiting that place for education, or if the tourism is actually taking place. That is what they take you in the vans and the jeeps around, right? So that is what it is. Next one, it is for research purposes and tourism also, with which is actually highly managed and regulated. That only is allowed over here. And the final area is the transition area, which is the outermost area, and here sustainable human activities can actually be there. That is taking MFPs, that is minor forest produce, then collecting honey for your livelihood. All that is allowed here, that is used for your purpose, okay, consumption purpose. So this is what, these are all the different zones of biosphere reserves, as you can actually see, and these are all the different what to say, description of those areas. What are the functions of biosphere reserves? Of course, first one is conservation, where if there are any endemic species, we actually aim at conserving them. If there is a genetic diversity, we try to protect them. If there are any ecosystems and the services provided by that, we actually manage to sustainably retain them. All this we actually do. Next one, development. There has to be that too only in the transition area. Okay, there has to be sustainable development over here and human growth also. Okay, next one is the logistic support. That's what it is actually promoting the research over there. It is giving you environmental education as well as tourism also to a regulated extent. So this is what it is. Do we have any 72 bird sanctuaries? Yeah, we know the number of sanctuaries right now. Okay, so now let us actually move forward about the man. And yeah, this is very very important, guys. Under what I told you, right, it is actually internationally designated by the UNESCO. The same UNESCO itself in 1971 actually brought about this man and biosphere program. Okay, this is called as MAB program in order to what to say, harmonize the existence between the humans as well as the environment. Okay, so this is what is the man and biosphere program. This integrates the natural and the social sciences, the economics and the education in order to enhance the well-being of both the human beings as well as to preserve the ecosystem. Okay, if you see, these are all the biosphere reserves. Okay, if you see, there is Great Nicobar in Andaman and Nicobar. If you actually see, the Gulf of Mannar is there in Tamil Nadu. We have Seshachalam in Arunachal Pradesh. We have Sundarbans in West Bengal. We have Simlipal in Odisha. Similarly, if you see in Meghalaya and all, we have the Nokrek, we have the Dihang, we have the Dibang in Arunachal Pradesh. Then we have the Kanchenjunga in Sikkim. If you see towards the west, we have the Panchmarhi as well as the Panna in Madhya Pradesh. Then you have again the Achan Kamar, okay, and Amarkantak. These are all the reserves over here, and also Agastya Malai, which actually belongs to Tamil Nadu as well as Kerala. And then we have what? Kutch in Gujarat. Then we have Himachal Pradesh, you have the cold desert, and Nanda Devi in Uttarakhand. Okay, so these are few biosphere reserves. Okay, and you can even see the Dibru Saikova, all these things are present in Assam. Okay, so these are all the different biosphere reserves present in India. So as of 2024, India has 18 notified biosphere reserves and 12 are actually recognized under the UNESCO Man and Biosphere program. Okay, MAB program. And these are what they are. They actually occupy the 18 Indian biosphere reserves in India. They occupy around what? 89,208 square kilometer, and which was the first biosphere reserve in India, which was actually the first biosphere reserve in India, which was actually established by UNESCO in the year 1986, which was it? The Nilgiri Biosphere Reserves become again very, very important. Okay, so this is what it is. Now let us actually move forward. If you see the Nilgiris over here, it is located here, Karnataka, the confluence region over here. So this is the Nilgiris. Next one is the eco-sensitive areas. We'll see if the time actually permits. Okay. So, yeah, we actually, yeah, 18 is in India, and we discussed, right, worldwide how many are the biosphere reserves, and with the addition, or there was addition of how many? 11 new biosphere reserves, and there are around 760 biosphere reserves which are spread across 136 countries. I hope you are clear, Sumit. So, with this, we will move to the last topic for the day, that is the eco-sensitive areas. From this itself, you actually know, right, what do you mean by eco-sensitive areas? They are extremely sensitive areas where these are also considered to be no development zone areas. Okay, so they actually act as a buffer. So around these biosphere reserves and these conservation areas like the wildlife sanctuaries, tiger reserves, etc., there is this particular area that acts as a buffer, and this buffer area is called as the eco-sensitive area. Okay, so the central government recently said that the Western Ghats shall be considered as the eco-sensitive area. But once it's given the eco-sensitive area status, what happens? There are only no or minimal level of development that is actually allowed to take place there, for which the Karnataka government recently asked the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change to withdraw the draft, which actually said that declare the eco-sensitive area, that is Western Ghats, as eco-sensitive areas. Do you understand? So here, let's move forward. and see what are eco-sensitive areas. These are ecologically very fragile areas, okay, very fragile zones which are surrounding the protected areas. I told you they can be either the national parks, the wildlife sanctuary, biosphere reserves, etc., which act as the, okay, so this actually act as the transition zone, so that there will not be any kind of direct human threat on the biosphere reserves, etc. This is what, in order to regulate the developmental activities, to reduce the man-made conflict and to conserve the ecosystem. This is very easy only, no? If you see, these are the major biodiversity, eco-sensitive areas, okay. So this is what is your entire Western Ghats, if you see, in Maharashtra region. And also the Pulicat bird sanctuaries over here, the Sundarbans, this is also an eco-sensitive area. And also you have the Karnal bird sanctuary in Mumbai, and then you have the Bandipur National Park and Tiger Reserve in Karnataka. All these are sensitive areas, okay. So the Sultanpur National Bird Sanctuary in Haryana, and finally the Okla Bird Sanctuary, which is located in Noida. So you know, right, Okla, a part of Noida. What is Noida full form? However, not important. Anyways, these are the eco-sensitive areas. Let's move forward and see from what is the legal basis of the eco-sensitive areas. This is also notified under, I actually told you that the states can notify the tiger reserves under section 38 of what? Tiger Wildlife. So, Wildlife Protection Act. Here, eco-sensitive areas. So, section 32 of the Environment Protection Act, right? So, Environment Protection Act 1986. So, tiger, remember it like that, otherwise there will be too much of regulations and everything for us to remember, right? So this is actually under section 32 of the Environment Protection Act, as well as Rule 5 of the Environment Protection Rule 1986, because eco-sensitive majorly means the total environment per se, right? Next one. This typically extends to around 10 kilometers around the protected areas. These are the protected areas. From here 10 kilometers you actually have these eco-sensitive areas. But this can actually vary depending upon the sensitivity of this particular ecological area. So where did this concept actually originate? This actually was introduced under the National Wildlife Action Plan between 2002 to 2016 in order to provide additional protection to this biodiversity beyond the protected areas. So these are protected areas. In order to give additional protection to the biodiversity, we definitely need to have this eco-sensitive areas. This is what they said, okay. So National Wildlife Protection Plan. Next, so let us actually see the key developments in this. In 2002, what happened? The Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, they actually declare, I'm sorry, they actually mandated the states should declare the ESAs, that is the eco-sensitive areas around the national parks and the sanctuaries they have. Then in 2011, the Western Ghats Ecology Expert Panel, this was chaired by Madhav Ghadgil. They actually recommended designate this entire Western Ghats as the eco-sensitive areas, okay. Then in 2013, there was this expert working group under Kasturi Rangan. These names very important, Madhav Ghadgil and Kasturi Rangan committee, because they had actually asked what are the recommendations of the Kasturi Rangan committee in order to preserve Western Ghats. Very important. So the Kasturi Rangan, they reviewed this Gargid report and suggested a more practical approach, okay. They actually said that, okay, let us keep an ESA, that is eco-sensitive area, but let the area be reduced little further. That's what they actually said. So now what happens? The MOE, that is the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, has come up with the draft notification. So when all it came up with, first it came up in 2014, then it came up 4 years later, 2018, and finally 2024 for the Western Ghats ESAs. And this actually is facing a lot of resistance by the different states, because when you're further increasing the area of environment of this eco-sensitive area, then I can't carry any kind of development for my state, right? So that is becoming a concern for different states, okay. So this is what are the eco-sensitive areas. What are the key features of the eco-sensitive areas? Let's see. So the purpose, of course, I told you, if it's not visible, let me zoom it further for you guys. God, what is this? Okay. This is too big now. Okay. The purpose is it actually acts as a shock absorber for the purpose is it actually acts as a shock absorber for the protected areas. We actually saw this one. And then it promotes the sustainable development, that also we saw, while conserving the biodiversity. And then activities that are regulated over here is prohibited activities. What are all the activities that are prohibited? What are all the regulated activities? What are all the permitted activities in these eco-sensitive areas become very, very important. So the prohibited activities is you cannot do any kind of mining. Second one, polluting industries like the thermal power plants actually cannot be established here, as well as other projects like hydroelectric projects and heavy infrastructure cannot be used. And also you cannot log wood, that is commercial use of firewood cannot be done over here. So all these are prohibited. Okay. Next one, the regulated activities. Okay. Here felling of trees allowed, but then it is actually regulated very strictly. Okay. Then construction of hotels or resorts, and when you are actually laying off the electrical cables, etc., and commercial use of water resources, then change in any kind of agricultural practices over here, all these are regulated. And then which magazine is better, Pratyogita Darpan, Civil Services Chronicle, Kurukshetra or Yojana? If you are asking me, I am actually teaching for Narayana IAS, right? So, of course, see, if you don't know, we actually come up with a monthly as well as the yearly magazine, which covers all the magazines that you've told here. Kurukshetra, then it has the Pratyogita Darpan, we have the articles from Yojana also. You can have a look at that, and we also have a yearly compilation that has actually been released in order to ease your preparation. Rather than giving you verbose content, we have inculcated a number of infographics over there. So please do visit Narayana IAS Academy website, and you can actually go through our monthly and the yearly magazine, and after that it's your call to follow whatever you want. Okay, so that is what I would like to say to Sumit. So yeah, moving forward, these are the activities that are prohibited, regulated and permitted. Next one, the zonation. Okay, so some eco-sensitive areas like the Western Ghats are divided into zones. That is, high sensitivity areas are EZ1, EZ2 are moderate sensitivity areas for any kind of tailored regulation. Okay, so these are the key features of what? The uh, eco-sensitive areas. So with this, we've actually come to the end of our lecture, where we have successfully completed the topic of climate change, and moving forward we have also completed the topic of biodiversity. So to sum it up, what we have actually covered: ecosystems. Okay, different types of ecosystems have been covered. We saw the forest, the oceans, then we saw the peatlands, mangroves, Ramsar Convention, mountain partnership and whatnot. Okay, UN red and everything we actually saw to combat desertification. All the important themes we had actually covered: the oceans, high seas treaty, as well as blue flag certification. All that has been covered under your ecosystem. Then we moved to the environmental organizations. We actually covered the national as well as the global organization, WWF, and then we covered GEF, we covered IMD, NGT. Okay, all that we covered. Then we moved on to the topic of climate change. We actually first started with climate change adaptation and mitigation. For example, carbon conservation and the carbon emission, how to control that, the methane pledge, and followed by that we actually spoke about what? The UNCCD, that is the COP16 under UNCCD, what were the takeaways, and we saw the World Drought Atlas, what were the takeaways, what was the, the area that has actually been degraded by desertification, globally, as well as what to say, nationally. We actually saw that. And after that we moved to UNFCCC COP29 that recently took place at Baku. That also you would actually be aware of. We discussed what are the key takeaways, what were the goals of India and why India was disappointed, what are the pledges India actually signed, what are the concerns. It spoke about the junk carbon credits, all that we discussed, right? And moving on, we actually saw three more important topics with respect to the Antarctic Treaty as well as the Green Climate Fund. Okay, as well as methane emission targets, that is the methane assessment, as well as the response system we actually saw, that is the Mars. So with those three, as well as India's response to climate change with respect to the Ecomark label, with respect to that of what to say, the guidelines, the coastal regulation zone notification 2019, the greenwashing guidelines that was given by the Central Consumer Protection Authority we have seen, and with that we had actually closed on what, the climate change. Okay, then we moved on to biodiversity. We actually started with the three important concepts: what are tiger reserves, how they are notified in India, what are the number of tiger reserves, which has been the recent one that has been added to the list. And then we actually moved on to look at the biosphere reserves and whether they are internationally designated or not, and whether the UNESCO, UNESCO, how many biodiversity reserves that it has actually come up with, all that we saw. And finally, we saw this eco-sensitive areas, which actually act as a buffer to these protected areas, what is the zonation, etc. So with this, we've actually completed the ecosystems successfully, then environmental organs as well as bodies. We've completed the topic of biodiversity, and finally we've completed climate change, which are very, very important. And tomorrow we will actually stick to tomorrow we will actually stick to the topic of pollution, and moving forward we will actually look at other different topics which become important for your prelims examination. Do you understand? So thank you so much for watching. Here we've actually come to the end of our fourth session of current affairs, and please do what to say, follow this course very, very diligently, because we are dealing with the 100 most important topics that have high potential of appearing in your examination. So thank you so much. We'll meet you with the fifth lecture tomorrow. Thank you.